If there's anything you think of that you wish was cut out, just let me know. No questions asked. I will cut it out.
Whoa, what are we going to be talking about?
I
I don't
know.
know. Hey, look, it's just worth
So,
bringing it up.
wow, already it's like dun dun dun.
Don't let us cross the line,
Please
Jen.
don't
Patrick, you
ask me
can't make
those
that joke.
questions.
Like what?
I said,
What?
you can't make that joke. It's been true too many times.
I'm excited. I'm here for it. Now I'm like, what's going to happen? Awesome.
I was just going to ask if either one of you have any questions. All right,
No.
we'll leave it to us to ask the questions.
Thoughts, concerns, funny noises.
Farts.
Falls under the category of funny noises.
I know, just a man child that likes to fart.
This is going great.
It's going so good.
Welcome to another episode of Dead Headspace. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my friend Brennan LaFaro. Say hello, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
And our other friend, Candace Nola. Say hello, Candace.
Hello, everyone.
Today we are joined by Rebecca Rowland. Did I say that right? I feel like I didn't say that right.
Rowland, yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
And we have Jenn Lee. Say hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
So normally we ask what got you into horror, but we would like to know for the two of you, what got you in the industry, and we'll start with you, Rebecca.
Oh, in the industry in general, I mean, I would say, at least for what I'm doing now, I was originally hired to be a ghostwriter, and what I like to call a fluffer, even though people have told me that it's extremely inappropriate to use that term, but essentially that's what I was doing. I was given manuscripts or pitches or what have you, and then just told to kind of make it better, make things pop, fix the language, rewrite passages, blah, blah, blah. And I did that for a really long time. And I ghost wrote a memoir and did the whole book. I had taken a leave of absence from a grad program I was in to do it because it needed to be done right away. And then it fell through. Like, it was actually at the very last stage where the person had to agree on a cover, and she had some sort of disagreement with the press and just decided to back out. And at that point I thought, you know what, I'm tired of doing all of this work, and not having my name on something. So I decided to just go for it.
Wow. Before we move on, Brennan or Candace, I feel like one of you might have something interesting to ask about this.
No,
I mean, I would just throw in that I did not know that you were a ghostwriter, but that's such an interesting kind of, I guess, launching point to writing an anthologist career. And I'm curious, with you wearing so many different hats, do you have one that feels more comfortable than the others at this point?
I can tell you that I don't like to do both at the same time. In fact, someone was just posting about this on social media about whether anthologists should include their own work. And I have to admit, like, my very first anthology, I put one of my stories in there, and it was uncomfortable. I didn't like, because you can't sort of see you don't really have the eye for your own story. And if I could do it over again, I would not have put my story in there. I feel comfortable wearing both hats, but not at the same time. And I don't like working on my own project and an outside project at the same time, because I find that I get especially with an anthology, very hyper-focused on just that, just sort of everything from the editing to the promotion to it just becomes my whole central focus. And so I neglect my own writing, and that's okay. That's okay, because I really do like editing. But now I'm sort of shifting into the writing, and it's definitely a different feel. I mean, Candace can speak to it as well. I mean, she does the same thing. And do I like one more than the other? No. It just sort of depends on what the project is. Yeah.
One hat at a time makes an absolute, sort of logical sense. So, I mean, that's really your best answer there.
Yeah.
I kind of want to come back to the focusing on an anthology thing at some point, but I want to throw it to Jen real quick with the same, how did you get into the industry question?
Well, I moved to New York when I was a kid, which was a long time ago. And I was a New York actress, doing Broadway stuff and not Broadway stuff until I hit my 30s. And then I had kids. And then I got divorced and got a job in TV and was a casting director for 13 years. And I kind of landed into some documentary work through friends who knew I was an actress and wanted me to do scratch work before they hired the celebrities. This sounds so gross when I say it, but it's true. They wanted me to do scratch work for celebrities to then fill in, and then they just ended up using my scratch work. So that happened like a lot of times.
I don't know what scratch work is. I don't know if
that means like we're gonna get Meryl Streep to do this, but can you just do the VO for us so that we can get the editing down and we don't have to, worry about wasting her time while we get all our. Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Shit in a row.
Fucking time if you want.
Yay! Anyway. So I did some documentary work and realized that I really loved doing voiceover work, and I really didn't love doing TV as much as I love TV. I was doing unscripted documentary series TV, which is a ridiculous thing to be involved in and make and cast and try and sell. So I was doing all those things, and I kind of couldn't do that anymore mentally. So I decided to get trained for more VO stuff, and quickly kind of felt like I wanted to do audiobooks, and then tried it and was like, no, this is nuts. This is the nuttiest thing that anyone would ever do. It's the least well-paid VO for the most excruciating amount of work. And then I made it my focus because people are dumb. And I just love it. I'm obsessed with it. I wake up and I'm like, woohoo, I'm so excited. And you will find that most narrators, if they have decided to do such a silly thing as become a narrator, are obsessive nerds about it.
To be fair, I do hear that advice in writing too. That you gotta be not like, it's a thing where if your heart's not into it, is what I'm hearing you say, then don't do it.
Oh my God. The time it takes to make an audiobook is prohibitive. Even if you're doing it in studio with a team, still prohibitive. And most of the time, most narrators now are not. We're doing it in our home studios. So we're running tech ourselves. We're self-directing. We're doing all the file naming. And we're doing the punch and roll, which is how a lot of us record, so that we're a little bit cleaning up our mistakes as we go.
That's interesting. You don't have to answer this question, but I do want to say my thought out loud is that makes me wonder if voiceover actors or actresses are paid for all the extra work, because that's a lot of time.
Well, so if an indie author says to me, yeah, I want you to produce my audiobook, and it's not through a publisher, and that happens often. You say, okay, well, for instance, I need $275 per finished hour. And they go, what? That is a ridiculous amount of money. But for me, that money is cut by 4 or 5 times because of all the things that I need to do. So it's very hard to explain that to people sometimes. They really don't understand why it's hard to be in a booth and record words.
That's also interesting, because a lot of times my experience has been that people that aren't in the industry of entertainment, any entertainment, they don't really know. Obviously, they don't know what it takes, so they just think, oh, it's fun. It looks good. If you're really good at your art and you bust your hump on it, good plug, American Cannibal. Like, I don't know how much time you put into that, but I'm sure that people that aren't in this industry don't understand why it costs so much money. It's really weird too, because it's like one of the only forms that we're kind of thought of as like not needing to be as paid as much, but without all this art, like what are you gonna do with most of your time? It's a weird thing, and I'm really glad that you're talking about this, Jen. Is
Yeah,
there
that's why, we're all raising our flag about AI, which
Mhm,
affects everyone and is
mhm.
so fucking ridiculous and important to writers, artists, narrators. They're going to take our art and they're going to take our jobs. And I feel like it makes me want to, oh my God, makes me want to cry. It's going to take over, and books and pieces of art and human voices are going to go away. And it's just sickening. So if anyone is inclined to beat that drum, please beat it loudly with us, because we are in theory getting to a point of extinction, which is sad.
Is an interesting time. Sure.
I will never understand why, we have harnessed robots to do the fun jobs instead of like, can't we teach them to clean floors?
Right, exactly.
What are we
Talking
doing?
about a Roomba.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's so many things they can be useful for. Why is making art become,
Yeah.
because people don't understand that making art is work. It can be work and it is hard. People think, oh, you're an artist, it's easy. It's not easy. It's hard. You put your heart and soul into it, and when we're narrating books, like Rebecca's book, I'm suffering over each sentence that I want to make sure, am I understanding what Rebecca wanted with this?
Mm.
Am I understanding where the character's going? Am I understanding what's coming? Am I understanding the big picture of what Rebecca wanted in this particular story? And it's always different. And that's why doing an anthology was, wow, mind blowing. So different from doing a whole book, and
Yeah.
great, amazing. So fun.
Yeah. No, I'll share. I got the audiobook back for my first collection recently, and there's a story in there that, I wrote it, I edited it 100 times, I read it 100 more times, as we were getting ready to put it out. And when I got to hear what the narrator had done with it, 2 years after I wrote it, like, it brought tears to my eyes because they just got it. And that's something that's not recreatable by a machine. It can't be done. To just put that heart and soul and those blood, sweat, and tears behind those words, and just like the innate human understanding of, here's what this story means, and here's how, I can tailor my performance to beat the listener over the head with that and make them understand. Yeah, no, you guys do a freaking service.
And who was that amazing narrator?
Marnie Karger.
Marnie Karger. Yay,
On
Marnie.
Yeah, no, she killed it. She did a great job on that.
Yeah.
You guys want to dive into the book now then?
Please.
Sure.
So, stupid blurred background. Okay,
Oh.
I give up. If I take the blur off, you're gonna see the mess my kid left behind, so I won't do that. But what I was holding
The
up,
kid, definitely the kid.
what I was holding up was Rebecca's copy of White Trash and Recycled Nightmares. That is her latest book. It's a lovely collection, and there are some not unusual for your work, but there's just some really hard hits to the heart there with this, because I'm from the same area as Rebecca, so it's really it's fun for me when I hear a writer like Stephen King does it with some things, like he mentioned Taunton in one of his short stories, and that's where my mom's from. I'm like, that's cool shit. But you do that a lot in your work, and it feels like I'm not in Massachusetts and haven't been for almost 8 years, and it's something like that that brings me back to home. And that's why even in the darkness of all the stories, I'm like, I understand this, but I don't like part of it. But yeah, I'm rambling. Can you tell us what the collection is about in a nutshell, if that's possible?
Oh gosh. Someone asked me about that the other day, and I'm like, what is the blurb on the back? And I wish that I could say that there's one like unifying, defined theme, and there really isn't, except what is always in my work, and that's 90% of it is just human beings and situations that appear very normal and aren't. And if you sort of peel back the first layer, you realize there's something that is rotten, and then the more layers you peel back, you realize it is something pretty monstrous going on. And I think that is just in general what my work is. It's all about how things appear one way and that they're really quite frightening underneath.
I'll just say this with the first one, Layover, without spoiling it, you really got me to where the direction was going, and that's something that I really like with your stories. Brennan,
Thank you.
you absolutely. Brennan, or no, actually, it's Candace. Candace, you had a really good question. I believe it was for Jenn about her stories. Am I mixing that up, or was it Brennan?
Just throw it to Candace, please.
Candace, go ahead.
Candace is like, okay.
Sure. No, actually, if I can remember how I wanted to word it now. We were talking about the incredible range of stories in the book, and we wanted to know if there was a particular story that resonated more so with you than any of the other ones as you were reading them, and if so, which one and why?
Oh, well, I mean, it was like narrating what, 20 different books, which is just dreamy for a narrator. And I was thinking about this in the shower, which is a little coming back to what you said, which is that I could tell in the first paragraph, right? Not what the story was going to be, of course not. Far from it. But I could tell what the flavor, what that particular flavor of that story and probably that character was. It's so clear. Your writing, Rebecca, is so clear that I didn't have to go like, sometimes with books you have to like go searching like, what? I don't understand why this character is doing this. It does not make any sense to me. No, you get it immediately. So not unlike that, I would get to a story and be like, this is definitely my favorite one. And then I'd be like, okay, and here comes this one. And then I would end up doing that one that I was a little bit less like gung-ho about. And I'd be like, no, that was my favorite one. That was my favorite one. And that happened so many times. I kept thinking, oh, this is my favorite one. And then I'd be like, oh no, but that one's my favorite one. So it was impossible because they're so different. It's like choosing between your children, right? But for me, I'm a horror person and definitely a horror narrator. And for me, I prefer the kind of horror books where you are uncovering the everyday life, the pedanticness of everyday life and everyday experiences, going to work and having kids and and you're finding out where is the mystical underneath that, where's the horror beneath that, why, and what's scary and what's moving about it being scary. I find horror very moving. So I'm not answering your question. I love Mountain of the Dead because I'm like a forest horror person. I just want to see a movie where people are out in the woods and bad things are happening.
Yeah.
And I loved Fear No Drowning because I like horror that means that, I mean, I don't want to say horror doesn't mean anything to each one, but I prefer a psychological kind of life. I don't know how to explain it. I think you know what I mean. I prefer that kind of psychological horror.
It's your flavor.
It's my flavor. It's my flavor. I mean, I love the caves so much. Oh my gosh. It's impossible. I mean, I'm looking at the list now and I'm like, yeah, that one. No, that one. I don't know.
I'm going through it too. And that's an unfair question. No, I'm just joking. That was a good question. I'm kidding.
It's really hard.
I'm kidding.
Well, it's always
it is a good
one.
Oh, Trip Trap. What about Trip Trap? Oh, Trip Trap. It's like the best, good old fashioned, like, yes, this is exactly the horror story book thing. I
I
want
like
to.
that title too.
Oh, this trip chapter was fun because there's so many fun things in it that happen and people that talk. It was fun.
I'm going to have to bottle this. And every time that I have like imposter syndrome, I can just like play it back.
Yeah.
Tell me again, Jen. Tell me.
Yeah,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for saying those things.
Jen,
We
what's your favorite thing about Rebecca?
my favorite thing about Rebecca is that she actually wants to spend time with me in real life.
Yes.
You want to know something
Yeah.
funny?
Yes.
The first time we walked around New York City and we had a good time. And then we went to my daughter's burlesque show.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yep.
The best thing to do.
Did she know? Did you go in and be like, hey, by the way, that's my daughter? Did you?
Oh, no,
Oh, no, I
I
know.
absolutely
Okay.
beforehand was like, I would love to get together with you on that day. But my daughter has her first burlesque show.
Yeah.
I was like, bring it. Let's
Bring
do
the
it.
ass, bring the tits and ass. It was great. It's awesome.
Was that one? I probably not, but was that the day that your cover was in
No,
only one of the biggest centers of
I know.
America?
I was so pissed off when I was not informed or aware that was happening. I was like, why didn't you tell me that was happening?
That was a surprise to me. And it was a birthday present. I had no idea it was going to happen until it happened. So yeah, that was very exciting.
Times Square
That's
billboard.
amazing.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And it looked so good.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so cool. That's really just like one of the neatest things that could happen to any author.
Yeah.
Hell of a birthday present.
It
Yeah, right.
really was. It really was. Yep. Yeah.
I literally sent it to my family, my friends. I'm like, look what's happening right now.
How'd you feel
Yeah.
in that moment when you saw it? Did you was it like an out of the body experience?
It was really odd. And so I had gone to New York City with my writing partner, and we went to see Grey House. That was part of my birthday present. And then he said, oh, let's go to Times Square. And I hate Times Square. I absolutely loathe it. I don't like the crowds. I don't like the commercialism. And so I said to him, like, no way. There's like, well, let's go here. And he's like, no. We need to go to Times Square. I'm like, what? Why are we going to Times? He's like, listen, we need to go to Times Square now. Can we just go now? I said, all right. So we're walking and we're standing, and I could tell that there was going to be something going on because he stopped right there in sort of the central area where the billboard is, and he's like, take a look up there. And sure, when it hit, I was just, it's to this day, it's one of the nicest things I think that anyone's ever done for me. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
God the
awesome.
cover was so amazing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, both of them. So he put up both Cannibal and White Trash, and I got two of the best cover artists I think in the business for those two. So I've hit the lottery this year between the audiobook narrators, the cover artists, the writers in Cannibal. I've really been extremely, extremely fortunate and blessed, and I am fully aware of that. Yeah.
To me, that's the greatest quality in a human. Like being thankful, humility, being humble. You're all those things. You're a really sweet person to talk to. And by the way, like this relates to you in a second, but when I was growing up, my dad taught me a few things that I take to this day. And one of the lessons was always write. And I should point out, this is before like the internet blew up to what it is today, and before we had cell phones. So it definitely applies even more so today. But he said, always write someone a letter to say you're thankful, if especially if you mean it. And you did that with us, and that always stuck with me. I'm like, you would think more writers would do that. I'm not asking for that, but to me, that was just like, holy crap, she actually cares. Not to say other people don't, but like it just, I don't know, it kind of sits really special with you. So sorry to put you on the spot, but I just want to say that I found it to be very sweet. Can we talk about American Cannibal for a moment and then jump back to White
For
Trash?
sure. Absolutely.
I just wanted to say how it was one of my favorite anthologies. Like you and Candace both have created anthologies that will forever stick with me. And for those that aren't familiar with American Cannibal, we had them on a few months ago, and it was just so much fun. Jeff Strand is so freaking funny. He's just so funny, and his story in at Y2K was absolutely hilarious. But my question for that is, going into it with American Cannibal,
Yeah.
were your expectations absolutely crushed afterwards?
Crushed in a good way.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I should specify that. Crushed in a good way, meaning like, were you expecting it to be this much fun, and then it turns out that you just every expectation you had just was
they exceeded it for
exceeded.
sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you. Words are hard.
so I went to each one of these authors, Candace being one of them.
Mhm.
I specifically chose these authors because I wanted a very wide variety of approaches and subgenres and expertise. And so when I was narrowing down the list, I wanted splatter writers, I wanted feminist horror writers, I wanted psychological horror people, I wanted quiet horror people, I wanted people who are going to write more sort of like a quieter, more of a sort of a whisper. And then I wanted some that were going to scream. And but I didn't specify that, and I said, as Candace will say, I walked up to her at AuthorCon. I said, I'm doing this. Are you interested? And she's like, yeah, sure. And then she sent me this story, and it was like amazing,
Yeah.
amazing, right? So all of these writers, and I did, and when I invited them, I'm like, first of all, when you invite people, you also have to think like, are they really going to show up with a story? They all did, and none of them phoned it in. Like none of them sort of gave me sort of like, oh, I'm just going to throw this on a piece of paper and here, take it. They far exceeded my expectations, to the point where I was waiting for the other shoe to drop as each one of these stories came in, because I thought, well, at some point I'm going to get one that's just, that's going to be terrible, and that just never happened. And secondly, I didn't get not a whiff of like ego, divaness. All of these authors were incredibly nice to work with, and they promoted the collection, which they don't have to do. I think that presses and editors don't realize that, once you have someone in an anthology, you're paying for the story. That's it. They're not making royalties off of this unless it's a royalty split kind of deal. It's a one and done. Like, they have their other things to do. And so when these authors kind of stuck with it and promoted it and offered reviewers and continue to this day, I will still, talk to some of them, and they'll say like, hey, so-and-so was asking about American Cannibal, and I mentioned this on a podcast, and they don't have to, they all have their own shit to do. They don't have to, talk about Cannibal ever again. And that's why I say I truly, truly am very fortunate to have that ensemble, to have Lynn Hansen do that artwork, to have Mark Johannes do the audiobook, everything about it. There's just, I just can't be thankful enough. So thanks for asking about it. I always like talking about American Cannibal.
Oh, absolutely. That American Cannibal, and then Candace's Baker's Dozen. I just absolutely love those two books. Are so freaking good. And not that, correct me if I'm wrong, not that American Cannibal is like, it's not just one genre. You said it's a bunch of different. It definitely shows a great range of what horror is. And I bring that up because, and we've talked about this before, but like, some people say I don't like horror. My wife says I don't like horror that much. She's not a huge fan of it. And I'm like, well, you kind of do. I mean, we both love true crime, and that's in the umbrella of horror. So I'm pointing that out because it just really does tackle everything you mentioned. And they all do it so nicely too. Like, they're all great stories. And same for Candace's Baker's Dozen, where that's specific in the splatterpunk scene, right?
Extreme splatterpunk, I guess. It's a mix of both.
But it's still not like over the top for the sake of it. It's compelling, it's in depth with the characterization, and it's just good narration.
Yeah, I liked the carrot cake one. Was that Harrison's story? The carrot cake with the woman making the carrot cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What was it called? What was it called?
The carrot cake one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
I'm
have to look-
blanking on it too.
I'd have to
I'm
look it up.
blanking.
I don't know on the top of my head. There are
I
too many
have it.
stories that we can consume in.
I can grab it.
Okay, while you do that, I will.
Hold on. It's right here.
So I actually have a story in Candace's next anthology that drops at the end of the month. Her
really
Dark
like that.
Disasters. Yeah. Oh, you know. What am I saying? You both know. Because Brennan's in it and you did the forward. So
really,
I'm just
really
letting you
liked it.
know. Yeah. That was super fun. That was a super fun story to write.
For Patrick Harrison's story, they're always watching, is what it was.
Okay.
They're always watching. And that one, he went somewhere with that story that I was not expecting at all. And it was just spot on. So it was fun. As far as American Cannibal goes, Rebecca, I don't know if you know this or not, but you were actually my very first official anthology invite ever.
Really? That
didn't-
surprises me. That
I didn't know
surprises
that.
me.
Well, that was actually like my very first year, like really out as an author. And that was the first convention I ever went to. So that was kind of like my first introduction to the industry as a whole, where people were kind of like, oh, you're you, and you're the one who did the Baker's Dozen and this and that. And you were actually my first anthology invite. So thank you for that.
We're so cool about it too. You were like, yeah. And so I would have never guessed that. Because I was like, oh, is she gonna say yes now? And then later on she's gonna email me and be like, nah.
No, on the inside, I was super excited. And when we walked away, because my mom was with me, when we walked away, I was like, she just invited me. She was like, I know, it was there.
Candace has
On
a
the inside,
really
I was screaming, but I was just like, yeah, sure, let's play this like I know what you're talking about, and I do this all the time.
Candace and Brennan have a really good poker face. I don't. It's annoying at times because I'll tell them something where I think they're gonna get super excited, and then through text they're just like, okay, like,
I mean, we do that to mess with you, Patrick. I mean,
It's true.
it's fun.
You shouldn't share this shit out loud because there are people that listen that I talk to that will then do that, and
But
I
it's
will think
funny.
I'm the only one that's excited about shit.
But it's funny for us because we know exactly what you're thinking. Anyway, back to Rebecca
Yes.
and my earlier question that we got to ask Jenn. With your white trash and recycled nightmares, which is absolutely incredible, by the way, as you already know my thoughts on the whole collection. Your range in this one is astounding. And I think that is the most appropriate word I can use because I don't know if you meant for this to have a particular theme or not. But I think the purpose of it is to really show everyone what exactly you're capable of. And by the time you get to the end of it, you've pretty much proven there's nothing you're not capable of. Like, this is an incredible range of just themes and topics and voice. And with that, do you have a story that was a standout for you that resonated more with you that maybe just means a little bit more than the rest of them with in it, and which one is it and why?
Oh, it's a good question. There are a few. Fear No Drowning I had written because my writing partner has a degenerative nerve disorder that it's called I always mispronounce it, Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, which is what I end up having the kid being diagnosed with in the story. And so we've been friends for a very, very long time, and he's gone a number of surgeries because he was unable to walk. It actually affects the ability to move your muscles, and it's one of these very frustrating diseases, very similar to things like MS, where if you see your body start to just not work anymore, and how that is so terrifying. And he and I have talked about it just innumerable times, and so I wrote that story specifically as kind of this, like, what does maybe to be easier if we knew that there was something stealing that ability. And in the story it ends up being a siren, right, that's sort of stealing his ability. And so that story meant a lot to me. White Trash means a lot to me because I think it has more of me than any other story I've ever written. And but my favorite in the collection, and it's never anyone's favorite, but it's still my favorite, is Monsters, and the one with the rabbit that actually gets run over by the car. I never include animal death in my stories. It's actually the one thing that I really don't like to read. I love Stephen Graham Jones. I love his stuff. But sometimes, I have to be like, because he throws in a lot of animal snuff. Like that's sort of like a motif in his work. And so it's the one drawback. It's sort of the one thing that keeps me from being obsessive over his work. Otherwise, I love what he does. And so I included that animal death because it had actually happened on my street, because I have rabbits that run around my backyard, and one was hit, and there was a group of boys that did some pretty awful things with the carcass, and it bothered me so much that I just sat down. And it was one of the few stories where I just sat down and I wrote it, just like beginning to end. And it felt good. It felt good to kind of get it down and done. And it almost felt like this weird, not that I needed therapy for a wild rabbit being hit on my street, but I just felt, it felt cathartic, and it felt good to kind of get my frustrations out in the story. And so,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to wrap Jenn back in here, and kind of a question that goes to both of you, but we'll start with Jenn. So you mentioned earlier that when you were taking on a short story collection, you basically treated it as a bunch of very short books. And I wonder if you could expand on that. But how do you approach short story collections versus a full length novel? And Rebecca, after that, I'd love to hear kind of how you went about choosing a narrator for a story collection, because with that diversity of stories, it's not an easy task. Jenn, go ahead.
Well, I think that I literally, this is my first anthology, so let me be clear. But I would just take each story as its own little cake, right? So and prep it like I would normally prep an entire novel, literally the same way, except that the story is the novel. So find the characters, find the themes. What is the author saying about the character? What are the characters saying about each other? What are the most important things, and what are the things that are leading you to the most important things? Because everything can't be important, or nothing is. And how are these people relating to each other, and how does that color how the story plays out, and how the magic or horror happens, or why? So I would do that for each one. So it was indeed like narrating 20 small books. Luckily, they're, 10 pages, 12 pages instead of 350 pages. So that prep is shortened. However, I think as a narrator, it's good to be cognizant of repeating yourself. And while we don't like to do, I'm doing a voice, finding voices that aren't repeated for the audience, for the listener, is helpful. It's helpful, but you can't just choose a voice for the heck of it. So it's a little bit of a dance in terms of how does this character talk? What's their physicality? But was there a similar character that might confuse the listener in the story beforehand? How can I make something aqua marine instead of forest green? Those are subtle things that you try to do, but most importantly, we're trying to tell the story for the author. So it's not about me and what I'm doing. I'm trying to do it in the most entertaining and specific way possible, but that always comes from Rebecca. I think that was it. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm a talker. I'm sorry. I have to like stop myself from talking. So once I get started, I'm like a half an hour later.
I do like the color thing though. I think that absolutely speaks to what I was kind of wondering about, is just the ability to, have a certain length recording that has 20 individual books in it and have them, sound like they're by the same author and the same narrator, but to have each one with its own kind of unique characteristic is really what, I know I was searching for. So Rebecca, what were you searching for?
I mean, I just wanted a really good, and anyone will tell you this, any editor will tell you, your audiobook narrator is going to make or break that audiobook, period. Because if you get someone that isn't a trained actor, it's going to flop. They just don't get it. I mean, there's a huge difference. I don't think people appreciate that there's a huge difference between reading a story out loud and actually inhabiting the character and the narrator and anticipating where things are going to go and sort of setting up your pace so that you are drawing the listener in. It's very few people can do it. And so it was really important to me. I always try to pick my battles when I work with publishers, because you can't be, when you're hired by when a publisher takes your work, you can't sort of be that diva where you demand all of these things, right? You really have to pick your battles. And so the one battle that I wanted to pick was the audiobook. And so when Dead Sky said, okay, well, this is who we're thinking of for the audiobook narrator, and I said, no, I want Jenn Lee. I was just immediately, no. And I knew of Jenn's work because years ago, I had beta read a novel for a friend of mine, and then she ended up narrating it. And I read the story, and then when it came out as the audiobook, I listened to it and I was like, she has actually brought this whole new layer to the character.
Oh, you're talking about me?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about, okay. I didn't know what you're talking about. I was like, who's she again?
Right.
She sounds lovely.
You Jenn Lee.
Yeah.
Brought a whole new level to the character in Beasts of Visaria County.
Oh, you're talking about
right? And so talking
about Queen of Teeth. Sorry.
Okay, then I want to talk about Queen of Teeth, because I was like, this is incredible. Like, I was just so blown away because there were aspects of the main character that I didn't get reading it the first time that I got with Jenn's rendition. And so and I had already read Haley Piper's Queen of Teeth. And so when I saw it was coming out from the same narrator, I'm like, well, now I got to listen to, because I mean, obviously, if I'm going to pick up things from this book, I'm going to see what she's going to bring to this book. And it was so good. Like the peanut butter, like it was just so good. And so I thought, this is it. Like, this is who I want. And Dead Sky was like, oh yeah, we know who she is. And they were so like cool about it. They're like, yeah, we know who she is. But I think inside they were thinking like, yeah. And I was so happy when they were like, yeah, I think we're gonna go with Jenn Lee. I was like, thank you. And then working with Jenn, so she's so modest, but I credit her with this. I actually didn't realize how much of my own, I don't know, baggage I throw into my stories until like when we were talking, Jenn brought up like, hey, I'm noticing this motif in your work. This comes up an awful lot. Is there something you want to talk about? And like, is there? And then I really did that. I honestly, for like days after, I thought, holy shit, like what am I trying to work out with all of these stories? And I think that it even a reader might not pick that up, but because she is just so entrenched in that character and in each story, that she's picking up things that even I didn't pick up, being the creator. And so she's so fantastic. She's so fantastic.
Jenn, I want to pick up on that. That's super interesting. So you helped Rebecca kind of take a step back from herself to look within, herself. This is terribly worded. I need an editor. So my question is there specifically with White Trash, was there stories, or was there a kind of a theme to you going about each story, in the sense where maybe when you stepped away or while you're kind of studying it, I guess, was there anything that you learned about yourself? That's actually I'm wondering that question about really any book, because that seems really narrow just to say White Trash. Maybe in general throughout your voiceover career, have you had really tremendous takeaways where you kind of better yourself as a person from it?
Oh, I used to say every book, and now there's a genre that I work in as my pseudonym works, and where I can say, no, not every book, maybe. But I think every horror book for sure. And most every book, I think that you learn something about yourself, because you have to dig so deep to understand the people and the story. And you can't help but, if you're going to act something, you have to look back at yourself and figure out how you can act that, how you can understand it. So you have to look at your own life, and maybe not literally like sit there and like, let me look at my own life. But I think you're constantly having to dig back into yourself, which means that you have to look back at your own life. I think people are always surprised that I consider my niche a horror niche. Like, as a narrator, you don't want to be too nichey, but we all have things that we are maybe better at doing. And I always put horror first. That is my first choice. But I don't love all horror. I'm not a I did Haley's new splatter Western, but it was Haley Piper. So it's not even, so to call it a splatter Western is just putting it in a very tiny little box that it's hardly belongs in, because it's wild. But I think that looking at all these stories of Rebecca's, it really made me look at why I love horror, because it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. I don't love all horror movies. I want a ghost story. I want a psychological horror. I want those kinds of things in my movies, and I want to watch those all the time. I don't really want to watch, a slasher or a splatter. But I think that because I've had a lot of ups and downs in my life, and I have a lot of struggles that I kind of deal with physically on a daily basis, I think I'm thinking about death a lot, and what happens after, and why, and how can that be? How can you live and think about death a lot? So I feel like horror really examines fear and death and living. And so I think for me to continue to play in horror and love it, that makes me comfortable, because so often it's not something people want to discuss on a daily basis. People do not want to talk about death. People do not want to talk about um, physical problems and health problems. And it's just verboten in our society. And I think when you step into horror, you're getting relief. I don't know how to explain it. You're getting magic, and you're getting relief from things you're not supposed to talk about and things you're not supposed to think about, and being scared and scary stuff. And for me, that is a comfort in a weird way. So I just talk a lot, and I know it's going to be hard to edit because I talk so fast.
No, that's fine. And you just make me think that horror kind of makes us feel like kids again, because it's like the kid thing to do is to be afraid of like everything, but everyone's afraid of a lot. And it's just interesting because you were talking about how it covers magic and all other aspects of that. So Candace, why don't you jump in before I start talking a whole lot more and rambling?
Brennan had a question actually.
Yeah, I'll throw one out and then I'll come back to you, Candace. I will just throw out there, Jen, you had this, what I thought was a great answer, and then you kind of almost started trailing off at the end, like you thought we were going to judge you, but man, we're horror people. No, we know exactly what you mean.
I know. I love it so much. And yeah, when I hear it narrated, maybe not so great, that makes me really mad.
I understand. Rebecca, I wanted to kind of save this question toward the end of White Trash and Recycled Nightmares, because I had a favorite story in here, and I kept waiting for somebody else to mention it, and nobody did. And it's all fun and games until. So what I wanted to kind of ask you is, from early readers, early reviewers, anything like that, are there any stories in here that people really, really kind of attached to that surprised you?
Trip Trap actually is one of them, because it's my only, and it's not even that comedic, but I think it's my only sort of tongue-in-cheek, comedy horror. And I loved writing it, and it was fun to write, but I never thought that other people would like it.
You're so good at dialogue. You could, I don't necessarily want you to stop writing horror, but if you wanted to write like a rom-com or something, you absolutely could.
You just made her puke with her expression.
No, in a good way, like a good one. Like you could start a whole new genre, like horror rom-com.
I was going to say, and then they kill each other in the end.
Yes, it would be awesome. It'd be a cozy horror. Anyway, go ahead.
Played on the Hallmark Channel. That'd be hilarious.
That and New and Perfect. I've been really surprised how many people responded to that one. That one was published originally in After the Kool-Aid is Gone, which was a political horror anthology that came out, I want to say 4 years ago. And it was really hard to write. And I almost didn't put it in the collection when I was sending it out for consideration. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad it speaks to people. It's a hard story, I think, to read. It was a hard story to write. And so those two, I'm always surprised. But I'm really glad to hear that you liked It's All Fun and Games. That's my my Long Island serial killer story, is where it was actually inspired by that. Yeah.
That serial killer that just got caught. I forget his name.
Yeah.
That guy's a psycho.
Yeah. I mean, he'd just gone on. I mean, no one caught him for so many years. And I ended up watching this like multi-part documentary on, it started on on him on Link, I think they were calling him, or some Lisk. But then it sort of expanded and talked about how there were very similar murders throughout the United States, but not attributed to the same person. They were looking at who are the most vulnerable people in society. And I just thought it was really, really interesting how all of these, and they're mostly women that are being taken advantage of and targeted and murdered, and then no one's really looking at it. And why is that? And why are these killers getting away with it? And is it because of, you know, who the victims are, or is it because maybe the killer isn't someone that we suspect? Yeah.
I thought there was some fantastic use of misdirection in there. I'll
She's
leave it at
really
that.
good at
Thank
that
you.
shit, man.
Thank you.
Does anyone else? I don't want to jump in, but I had a question for Jen. And it's kind of about you too, Candace. So Jen, I don't know how long you've been doing doing voiceovers, but I am wondering, as far as, and it could be just in horror, but you know, we've talked, I don't even know how many times this comes up a lot, not just on the show, but how we're at a point now where, you know, due to social media too, especially, that things are opening up. It, you know, is primarily straight white dudes that wrote stuff, but now the market's being, at least in horror, I can't speak for other genres. It seems like it's finally having an even, it's aimed towards an even playing field. We're not there yet, obviously, but I would like to hear from you how you feel about, like, Rebecca or Candace, how they are coming up with just truly incredible work, a very good and diverse range of stories, and what it feels like to be in the industry while you're working with all these people. You talked about Haley Piper. I mean, she's renowned as, just for all the great stuff that she writes. She's an excellent writer, and you got to voice over, fair to say, one of her fan favorites of her books. So, how do you feel about all this?
Well, I'm happy about it as a woman and as a, you know, human being. I'm happy about anything like that. I don't, you know, I honestly, I love my writers. I'm obsessed with my writers. I love them so much. I feel like they've given me this little gift, and it's so special. And it sounds goofy, but it's true. But the first horror book I did was for Doug, which was Beasts of Fazaria County. And
What's his last name?
Ford.
Oh, Doug. Okay, Douglas Ford. Gotcha.
And I felt like that book was written for me. So I guess you could say, unless there's something about Douglas that I don't know, he maybe falls into that old-fashioned white guy category of, I'm a writer and this is what writers look like. But I don't really think about that too much. I don't think about Haley being a queer writer, or Rebecca being a woman, or Doug being a white guy, unless there's something in the book that I just find particularly striking, in a good or bad way, that's based around that theme. But it just doesn't occur to me to think about that, because I'm so in their work. I have to step inside of it. So that's really what I'm concentrating on. And I guess that's it. I guess I just view them as people, and I want to do work that is reflecting the change that needs to happen in this world. But for me, it always comes down to just literally the piece that I'm working on at the moment. Is that a bad answer?
No, I think it's beautiful, because basically what I hear, and then Rebecca, then Candace, then Brennan, jump in if you want. Basically what I'm hearing is that your main goal is whatever story you're working on, and that unless it's overly, because there are writers that just, whatever their background, they are very much so like, feel this way, do this is how I feel, this is who I am. Like, that's irritating, whatever the subject may be. It doesn't feel natural. So that's how I took what you said. Rebecca, do you want to jump in at all?
No, I mean, what I heard is something that I agree with, and that is, I think that horror in particular is finally catching up to what the world looks like. And no offense to the you know, two men in the room right now, but I mean, it's not just men.
Brennan. I'm a little
Don't
boy.
assume. Don't assume, Rekha.
I'm sorry. I
God.
didn't assume.
Man
Sorry.
child over here.
It it's not just white men that get scared, it's everyone gets scared. And so I think that even 10 years ago, people might have, looked at, something written by a woman or something written by a queer writer or whatever, and said like, oh, this is going to, this is going to read differently. This is no, we're all writing about what is scary. And I think that that's nice, finally, that horror is more inclusive. And I mean, again, I don't read a whole lot of other genres, so I have no idea what's going on in, say, like the romance. If you put a gun to my head, I'd be like, I cannot name one romance writer. So please don't ask me. I know you can. I know you can. But I don't know. I don't know what goes on in there. I only know what goes on in sort of dark fiction. And I think that finally, it's actually one of the reasons why I like horror, is that I feel like it's just we just recognize that we're all people and we all share these commonalities, and it has nothing to do with gender or race or class or sexuality or anything like that. So I think that it's finally representative of the world. We haven't gotten to perfection yet, but I think that we're a lot more advanced than some of the other genres.
I mean, I heard that from a lot of people that are in multiple genres and areas of the book world. So definitely tracks. Candace.
You're muted.
Yeah,
I looked up and saw that she was drinking. I didn't know when I asked her. I gotta stop doing that shit. I'm sorry.
it's fine. I don't really know what you're asking right now, other than how do we feel about the massive amount of diversity and inclusion that is exploding in the horror field right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Long overdue, long overdue, but it has been slowly increasing the last 20 years or so. But I think over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, it has sort of exploded to where the world is beginning to take note that, oh, look at all of this, and you have every race, every culture, every gender, every identity, every voice now is being recognized in the horror world as valid voices of, I don't want to say horror, but valid voices of experiences that deserve to be heard. I may be in the horror field, industry, whatever, but I don't look at it as just that niche. I look at it as I'm writing about life experiences, because to me, that's what it is. Horror encompasses the absolute range of what life is, because you can't write a horror story without adding in absolutely every single aspect of life. And that is everything from creation to love and heartbreak and loss and grief and assault and trauma and PTSD and war. It encompasses every human experience and emotion, because that's where you get to the heart of the horror and how that impacts the person that the story or the situation is happening to. All of those experiences that have made up their life is what drives them through the horror of the story. That's their motivation for either becoming the monster they are, or surviving whatever they went through. It's all of that, but it's all about life and what drives them to get through it. And right now, the fact that there are so many diverse voices in it right now is absolutely amazing, because anyone at any time can pick up a horror story or an anthology or a collection and see themselves represented in it. Maybe not their race or their culture at all times, but they can see their experiences represented in it in ways now that didn't exist 20 years ago. You have all of these different um the different experiences of life that are represented in it now, where it's not just the old straight white male, and here's the young woman being sexually assaulted, and now she's going to run through the woods and she's going to trip down and she's going to die. And it's the same thing over and over and over and over. Now you have an entire range of experiences that take place everywhere at any time, in any location, to anyone, and it's all there. I think it's great.
Could have ended with you. Brennan, go.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, you just said, I don't understand what you're asking, and then delivered an A+ dissertation on the topic. That was, you ought to buy a mic so you could drop it. So, I mean, I would just say, I don't think I have anything to add to the conversation. So I would just underline and, hit it with a highlighter that it's definitely making a big step toward reflecting the world we live in. And just the idea that fear is a human emotion, and the best stories treated as such.
Yeah. Got a comment from Vivian Casely. A while back, before I knew hardly anyone in the writing world, and before I had much published, Rebecca gave me a rejection for The Half That You See. That is, I think, a short story. In it, she told me that I was a gifted writer. Whenever I feel down, that rejection keeps me going. Thank you, Rebecca. Heart emoji.
That okay.
Oh, I thought
That
it was going to be
means-
bad, right?
know,
I was like,
Oh,
oh,
no.
shit.
We don't read those.
What's
Those are
happening
not
right
welcomed
now?
on the show.
And it's funny because I've read Vivian's stuff since then, because she pops up everywhere. She is everywhere. And I remember that story. And honestly, it would have been right in that anthology. It just didn't. I had another story that was too similar to hers. And that was the only reason I didn't take her work. She's a fantastic writer. It's fantastic. But to hear that she remembers that really means a lot to me. It's one thing that I always try to do as an editor is I always try to be a writer in the editor's seat, because I know, and I'm sure all of us here can say that we've dealt with an editor or a press owner or something who has been not empathetic, and we've walked away from them thinking, holy shit, am I even in the right industry anymore? And that's terrible. And especially when you have writers that are so gifted. I guess I don't know where I'm going with this, except to say thank you for telling me that. Thank you.
That's just one more note on Vivian. That's awesome. And you brought up a good thing. Rejections don't mean it's a bad story or not written well.
Right.
I think that's an awesome point. With my first anthology that I edited, her story, it met all the right things and it was great. There were other stories that were awesome, and I was like, okay, well, I don't have the money because I'm not the publisher, so I can only choose so many people. I get it. But yeah, she's coming out with a new book next year too, so keep out your eyes for that, which is a good threshold for this question from Candace.
Before we wrap up, Rebecca, you have something new in the works, don't you, my dear?
I do. So in January, there's a mini collection coming out. Michael Aloisi and I are releasing. It's a mini collection. It's called What Hath Women Wrought? And it's the story of 5 monstrous women. They're all monsters in some way, literal in most cases. And we are 100% of the proceeds go to Children of the Night. And Children of the Night is an organization that specifically helps young people who have been trafficked and helps them kind of integrate back into society, helps them with just everything to get them out of that terrible, terrible situation and back, back into a happy place. And so both Michael and I work with teenagers during the day in an urban school, and so trafficking is a real concern. And it's something that we feel very strongly about supporting our organizations like this. So take a look for it in January. Like I said, 100% of the proceeds go to Children of the Night. It'll be on Godless exclusively for the entire month of January. And then it'll be out in print everywhere else from February on. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's exciting.
And that's a really important cause. So thank you.
Yeah.
That Patrick.
You said that was children of the night, right?
Mhm.
Children of the Night. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely echo what Candace says. That's beautiful. Children of the Night. What are you currently reading, Rebecca?
Oh, so I'm reading 3 things right now. One is Clay McLeod Chapman's What Kind of Mother? Because I love everything he writes. It's more of like, this is I got a copy from him. He signed it and everything, and I sort of like kept it. It's like my dessert. Like I was just waiting to be able to start it. And so I started that, and then I'm reading 2 other books from authors that I absolutely love everything they do for reviews. One is V. Castro's Aliens Vasquez, which is, I'm about a third of the way through. If you are an Aliens fan of that entire universe, you will just, it's so geektastic because she just pulls in so many things from the movie series. And then I also have Gwendolyn Case, The Haunting of oh my God, now I'm going to say the title wrong. Haunting of Velkwood. Going, I just started as well, and that's for a review. So I'm juggling those 3 things. But I have, if you saw my to be read pile, it is insane. It's actually, it's outgrown my bookshelf. It's just from pulling things from conventions this year. You know what, if knock on wood, I never want to go back to our pandemic again, but if I ever have to be isolated for a year, that's going to be the silver lining. Actually, I can tackle that. So yes.
I've only been to one convention, and I spent way too much money on all the books. So I get it.
Yeah.
Jen, what are you currently reading?
What am I reading? I'm not great at reading just one thing. I was reading Frankenstein during Halloween because why wouldn't you? It's amazing. And I'm also getting through Ghoul, which is my book club. I'm in a speculative book club because I just can't find anything to read. So they picked Ghoul, so I'm getting through that. And let's see, the things that I listen, I don't read because I can't read. I can't stay cognizant long enough to read, but I started The Wishing Pool, which is an anthology, and Frankenstein. Oh, Holly. I'm getting through Holly because I'm a big Stephen King person. And
how is that? And it's the Holly Gibney spinoff, right? It's from
yes.
How is it so far? Because I have it. Like I have it on my shelf.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm such a Stephen King like nut, and Holly Gibney too. So I'm reserving my judgment. I don't know. I'm not super excited, but that could just be me. I don't want to say anything bad about it because it's, but yeah, it's not super scary. It's definitely got those more not scary vibe Stephen King vibes, which is fine, but and there was one more thing. Getting through All Hallows. All Hallows. And I'd like
Nice.
to start Pinata.
What's Pinata?
Pinata is, I haven't started yet, but it's by Leopoldo Gout. It says a head full of ghosts meets Mexican Gothic.
Hmm.
And it's supposed to be pretty amazing.
I don't think I've heard of that one. That's interesting.
I think it's Nightfire.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
It's about, it says inspired by the true horrific history of how Spanish conquistadors used piñatas to force Aztec children to break their gods.
The
Oh
fuck?
my.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm a cherry picker.
There you go.
Because I always am also then reading my own stuff. So I'm starting a new YA horror series. So I'm also starting all those. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, so now's a good time to plug your work.
Yes, I am starting a new, like I said, YA horror series with Christian Irwin. And it's going to be a lot of very sweet YA horror vibe novellas about Spite Lane, where all these poor kids live. So I'm excited because I don't usually do YA, and it's horror, and it's just so old school, wonderful. And yet all the characters at this point are she's really making an effort to be modern with these stories, which I appreciate very, very early on. So it's great.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Candace, what are you currently reading?
I am still working my way through this novel by Christopher Michael Blake, Crave for Dawn. About halfway through that now, which is fantastic. Aside from that, I'm not reading anything else right now because I'm still working my way through the last part of the anthology coming out, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be reading a foreword that someone's supposed to be writing for that anthology. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh,
Um,
that is already written. I'm just
oh,
nervous as fuck to give it to you.
So right now my time is heavily taken up by finishing the editing for the antho, but hopefully by the end of this week I'll be through with this one and I can start a couple other ones that are waiting over here on my list.
Nice. Shots fired. Brennan.
I do like seeing her take you to task live on air. It never gets old. It really doesn't.
And I won't cut it out either because it's funny.
Nope.
And I should just put a claw nose on my face on the logo, so get it all over with.
I am reading.
That's a joke, by the way, guys. I'm joking.
Wasn't very good. That's why nobody laughed.
I know.
I am reading The Dead Pennies by Bob Ford. We have an upcoming episode where we're going to talk to some cemetery dance people, including him and Kevin Lucia and John Bowden. So I read John Bowden's Snarl. It is, if you like John Bowden, you will love this book. It might be his best, and that's, no small feat. I'm reading Robert Ford's The Dead Pennies. It's about oversimplification, but it's about a haunted school, and I am absolutely there for that. And I am reading Kevin Lucia's Haunting at Pleasant Brook, I think it's called, which is Horror at Pleasant Brook. That's right. Yeah. And it's about a creepy small town, which I am also absolutely here for.
I think you need to just send me a list of the books that I should be reading because you sound like you like to read exactly what I like to read.
Tananarive Dew's The Reformatory. You'd love it.
Oh my God, yes.
Well, I'm reading that. I was going to start the anthology, which was the first thing I said, but I do have The Reformatory on my TBR list.
There you go.
There.
Bump it up. Patrick, go ahead.
I just started recently Nat Cassidy's The Nestlings. That I just started, so I can't really go into detail about it, but that's my answer. My answer is short and sweet. Rebecca, where can people follow you?
And I just want to give you a heads up. I just got a low battery on my laptop and I am so far away from a plug right now. So if I disappear, it's not like my weird Irish goodbye. I'm just sort of like, I'm looking. Best place to find me is on my website. It's just rowlandbooks.com. I creep around Instagram, which is at Rebecca_Rowland_books. I'm on Facebook, but not very often, maybe like once every 2 weeks. The audiobook comes out November 28th. I'm trying to think. I'm like, is it 28th? I think it's the 28th. So, but it's up for pre-order now. So you want to secure that, it's up now on Audible.
Excellent.
It's the perfect Thanksgiving read.
Absolutely.
Or listen.
Where can people follow you there, Jen?
Oh, I am Jenn Lee Reads on all the things, the TikTok and the Instagram and the Facebook. I have a narrator page as well as my private page, and my website, if people are interested in work inquiries, is you can find from those things, but you can also just go to www.JennLeeAndrews. There's another name at the end of it, JennLeeAndrews.com, and that's a good way to hear other stuff that I've done. But yeah, I'm an Instagram gal, so that's my thing. I love it, and I'm on TikTok a little bit, but that's just dumb.
I like how you said Andrews.
Andrews. That's a holdover from my theater days, but yeah. So that's where you can find me mostly.
Excellent. Candace, where can people follow you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, under either my name or Uncomfortably Dark, which you can also find me on the Uncomfortably Dark website also.
Awesome. Brennan?
BrennanLaFaro.com has links to anything you could possibly need, I think.
And you can follow me on pretty much all the regular social media sites. PR McDonough for most of them, not Instagram. That was hacked. Now it's Pat R. McDonough. Final thoughts. We'll start with Rebecca.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for doing this. I have not heard the audiobook yet. It was not shared with me.
Jesus Christ.
So it's going to be it's going to be a delightful treat to be able to hear it. Thank you. Thank you. You're awesome. So.
Jen.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca. It is terrifying to know that you haven't heard it yet, but I do know that you've heard a good amount of my horror narration from me. Yeah. So I feel like, well, it's not like I went off the rails or anything like that. So you kind of know what I'm going to serve. But yeah, I love horror, and I'm so happy to work for horror authors, and I just want everyone to keep doing what they're doing. So there's a few things for me to slip under the rug and do too. You always hope when you work for a great author like Rebecca that you're just going to become like one of their little passel of narrators that they think about. And I hope that is the case after she hears it. Yikes. But yeah, thank you for writing horror. I think it matters. That's all.
Candace.
Not much. Just thank you to Jen and Rebecca for your time here today and everything that you write, Rebecca, because you are pretty much one of my newer inspirations over the last year or two. So yeah, just continue everything it is that you do, and thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us.
Brennan.
Rebecca, awesome to chat with you again, and Jen, excellent to meet you. I'm glad you guys could come hang out on a Saturday morning. And actually, I really loved Jen's sign-off line, so I'm going to borrow it and just say thank you for writing horror.
That's a cool sign-off line.
Oh, great! Now you're just going to say that all the time.
We'll license it. We'll work something out.
I won't. Brennan will.
You have to work. If you're going to use that as your tagline, you have to in everything say just mention that I'm a narrator, a horror narrator. You can just say that tagline, but just somehow work into the conversation in every podcast now.
As narrator, Jenn Lee.
As
always
Jen said
says,
one time. Yeah.
My final thoughts are thank you, Rebecca, for being here, and Jen, thank you as well. Yeah, you inspire me too there, Rebecca, as an editor. You and Candace are two people that I greatly look towards reading stuff from, and just keep doing what you're doing. And Jen, I can't wait to hear your rendition of Rebecca's book. Seriously, I'm big into audiobooks, so I'm very much so looking towards that.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Absolutely. Next episode is with Elena Urquhart. She is one of the co-hosts of Morbid. She also wrote a book called The Butcher and the Wren. So we'll see how that goes, and I can't wait. She's got a great true crime podcast, and as always, you have many choices in podcasts. Thank you for picking us.